Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk. My name is Mário, and today we'll be talking about anti-dogmatism. Feel free to ask questions anytime. Just leave your comments in the comment section, right in the right-hand side of the screen. But it's very important to say, as usual, the principle of this belief. Don't believe in anything, not even what we say here in our discussion. Experiment, have your own experiences. Our co-host today is Ricardo Botelho. Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk once again. Ricardo, my partner today. What are your expectations for our conversation today?
Thank you, Mario. Hello, everyone. Well, nice to be here again. It's always a pleasure. Well, very excited for this discussion. One of my favorite topics on conscientiology and on epistemology or science in general. So, and I expect a great discussion because we have a very special interview for today. So let's talk.
Very good. Yeah, definitely, it's a very important issue if you are actually working with science, right, in scientific works and researches. Okay, let's meet our special team of debaters today, right? The team joining us today is with Alexandre Zaslavsky. Alexandre has been teaching philosophy in high school for more than 25 years. He has a PhD in education and is a conscientiology researcher and volunteer since 1990s. He is the editor of the Journal of Interparadigmas. I have to just show you this because it's a very important publication in conscientiology. And here, Alexandre, I have some issues, some numbers of this very nice book. Alexandre is one of the editors of this journal and also author of several articles and verbetes, right? Mostly on the foundations of conscientiological knowledge, and co-author of the book Existential Inversion. Very welcome, Alexandre. This is your debut in the Let's Talk now live, right? Feel very welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be with you guys today.
Very good, Alexandre. Ulisses Schlosser is the other debater today. Ulisses is a psychologist, a researcher with publications in cosmo-conscientiology. He's the author of the Theological Dictionary of Paraphenomenology. And I also have this number, right, authored by our friend Ulisses Schlosser. It's available on Editaris website. And Ulisses is also a member of the NGO Alternative Perspectives in Global Concerns, APGC. He's been a volunteer since 1989 and currently is at the ASSIPI and teaching since 1999. Very welcome, Ulisses, once again at Let's Talk.
Thank you, Mario. It's an honor to be with you again, and also with our honored colleagues. Thank you to you all for this opportunity. Thank you.
Very good. Unfortunately, Wagner Strachicini had some family issues and could not come today. We hope everything is well, and we send you, Wagner, our best energies. It's important to say that Let's Talk is an initiative of ASSIPI. ASSIPI stands for International Association for the Interstitial Parapsychism. ASSIPI is one of the 25 consciential-centric institutions that study the consciousness as a whole based on the consciential paradigm as proposed by the new science conscientiology. Consciousness is you, me, every human being on this planet, right? ASSIPI is specialized in the study, research, development, and practical use of parapsychism, an important attribute for consciential evolution. ASSIPI English project is engaged in the internationalization of conscientiology, right? And is focused on promoting the study of parapsychism in English.
Good afternoon, my dear friends Ulisses and Alexandre. It's a great pleasure to participate in this conversation with you. I'm really glad to discuss this topic in which both of you are very experienced authors, together with other topics. But in this topic, you are really references for discussion. So pleasure to join Mário and our audience in this discussion. So let's talk about anti-dogmatism. And to begin with, we could start with the very definition and basic distinctions on the notions of dogma and personal belief. So could you, both of you, starting with Alexandre and then Ulisses, could you provide a brief overview of what dogma is and how it differs from personal beliefs or convictions?
Yes, sure. I understand a dogma as a sort of a statement which cannot be, for some reasons, it cannot be questioned, and people must believe in it, and it is sometimes even dangerous to question it. For example, because of social pressure or something like that. Its origin is mainly religion. Dogma, I believe it's a Latin word. I think it's a Latin word which is very associated with religion, but it gained a more broad sense. About the second part of the question, what's the difference between a personal belief or conviction? I was thinking about it, and I don't think there's so much difference, because a personal belief or conviction in itself could be dogmatic. So there's no difference at first sight among the difference has to come with other features, adding other features.
Thank you, Alexandre. And Ulisses?
Well, I agree with almost everything that Alexandre said. But by the end, I would say that there are differences. For instance, when we refer to a dogma, there is a decision from the person to consider it a dogma. So this decision is very important. It's not only the self-awareness on the belief. Beliefs may change, okay, but in a certain part of people, there is a clear decision to establish a principle or a statement which the person doesn't want change. There is a decision on that. And this decision is shared between those who established the statement and those who decided to firmly believe on it. So this decision is very important. Because after that, there is a tendency to expand the ideology on that. So in political terms, this decision to strongly believe in something is quite different from the nature of beliefs, because we may believe, we have many kinds of beliefs in our lives, and we may change it. If we consider the cognitive process, very probably it's not possible in our condition today to completely avoid beliefs. If we reflect about that, it's something that is part of our nature, because we don't live a life constantly made of full perceptions. The mental representation is necessary for our lives. So we have contact in our mind with predominant phenomena that we call mental representations. When we consider things that are not present in front of us. Okay, this is a phenomenon from our mind. And if we take this phenomenon as a basis, we will understand that the belief comes from this category. And in our evolutionary level, I don't see right now any possibility for us to avoid this condition. So this is natural. This is our nature. But when I take the decision to consider, for instance, only one belief, which I don't want to change, like a law, so I understand that this is the category of the dogma. It comes together with a political, ideological decision, okay? So this is the difference I consider between what we may say as a normal, a common belief, and a dogma. A dogma is something very strong in the recent history of humankind. As Alexandre said, for instance, in the Christianity, in the Catholic tradition, the religious tradition, is something that was built up very strongly. Okay? I don't know if I could say it clearly for you.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious to understand how we will really talk about those conceptions.
Very nice. Yes, I would just like to extend a bit this idea, Ulisses, because you said something very interesting, and I think that it actually concerns lots of people, which is, for me, there is two collocations for beliefs, right? One is when we have the verb to believe, which in English may vary a lot if we get the synonyms for belief. We can have trust, we can have consider, we can have assume, we can have rely on something, or when we are counting on something, but also when we give credit to something. And this is the point where you said that we might have our own beliefs. Yeah, because we trust on science, we trust on experimentations, we trust on our partners.
Yes. You trust that the sun is there outside.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I know that your experimentation was okay. I think that there's no reason for me to doubt it. But Alexandre said something before that we must also consider, is when dogma means something that's beyond the dispute, beyond the argumentation, is when you have to accept it, yes or yes, right? Then we have two visions of what dogmatic thing is. So, and then we can just go through it, but saying that we cannot be 100% free of dogmas. Am I right? Am I going to the right path?
Well, let me just about this point Ulisses just made, that a dogma needs to be consciously accepted, or you need to decide to accept, so it becomes a dogma. Well, I agree, but I think it's kind of a technical approach, like the literal approach to it. I think it's this he's saying, but when we consider the adjective for dogmatic, something's dogmatic, I think it's more broad sense than that. But at the same time, of course, we shouldn't consider every belief or any belief as a synonym of a dogma. No, not every belief is a dogma or dogmatic. There are differences to consider, but the dogmatic approach to things, I think it's not necessarily a conscious thing. It is not necessarily conscious. I think it's really spread in our culture. because of its religious origins. Christianism, but even Judaism, the first one, the big religions, as we say, or the religions of the book. So perhaps in the beginning it was that, like, wow, you should consider like a creed, for example. The dogma is a creed. So you have to agree about at least a set of assumptions, very specific. But in our culture, dogma has spread so much that the dogmatic attitude is not necessarily conscious, and it's a part of our culture. That's how I think about it.
Sure.
Open your microphone.
Yeah, Ulisses, your mic.
Your microphone is muted.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I fully agree with Alexandre, fully. The words I said before were referred to the dogma. But as Alexandre said, the dogmatic condition has, it functions, it works like a spectrum with many degrees, and I fully agree. Very good approach.
So, taking from what Alexandre has just said, and Alexandre, you could continue. How does dogma manifest in various aspects of society, such as religion, politics, or culture, and what are some of its potential consequences? And linking to another topic that we'd like to discuss, how does education and exposure to diverse perspectives influence antidogmatic behavior?
Yes, I may say something about that. Thank you. Well, Ricardo, you are asking about dogma, but I would suggest if we may consider the dogmatic approach, so we may have condition to discuss this broad influence. Okay?
Sure.
It is quite different, as Alexandre explained it. Well, I will not wait until the end of our conversation for me to try to reach the core of this subject. I think that the core point is about mental health. From my observations, from my study, for instance, if you have contact with people, even fundamentalists in different religions, but if the person has a good quality of life and good mental health, we may not feel bad during the conversation, and we may appreciate the life of those persons. But when we are in touch with people, when we observe the news from the media, most often, very often, in general, you may heard about people with problems in terms of mental health. And even to understand what is going on during the facts of life, the problems of life, the consequences of beliefs, mental health is something very critical. Recently, during the last 10 years, I have been dedicated to works with the problem of terrorism. And I have written about that. I have been invited to write about that, mainly after those attacks, those strikes in France, in the Bataclan, in 2013. I had the opportunity to participate in a global conference invited by the Arab League, because the problem of the terrorists, because the problem of faith, you see. And no doubt that the main problem in those cases is not faith, but the psychopathic condition of those people, you see. And so if we consider the radical events in humankind, or even other events not so radical. The problems in terms of mental health to lead with people with prejudice, with intense manifestation of ideological preferences, we may find clear tendencies in terms of mental disease. So I may consider that despite all the analysis that we are able to do, our understanding on the phenomenon, and even if we consider our colleagues, scientists, philosophers, researchers, we may find issues in terms of mental health. So I consider this the main problem, because the dogmatic field is a kind of invitation for anyone to take for himself something that he prefers, that gives safety, that gives power to the people to be more strong in terms of preferences, ideological preferences, you see. So this is very dangerous. In general, in the other side, people with good mental health, I may consider a person with good mental health a very good level of mental flexibility, you understand? So if the person has flexibility, it's more easy to understand, to talk about that, to talk about different positions. So the dogmatic field, it naturally becomes weaker. So this is I think that I prepared this thought to say here. So this is my main consideration on this topic, the problem of mental health in this field.
Excellent. Thank you, Ulisses. Alexandre, any additional comments?
Well, I go basically on the same path as Ulisses. I would just like maybe to highlight a little bit some things. I also think that, I think too that the dogmatic stance is so spread in our culture, in our society. It's not a privilege of a few. It's a real feature in our, I would say, Western society, but for lack of knowledge, I would bet that it is spread all over the world. But it's not a privilege of a few, like Ulisses said, scientists, philosophers, politicians, the government, and so on. Probably everyone has some features of a dogmatic stance or attitudes and so on. But I think I like another word. Like I agree, it's flexibility, probably the antonym, the opposite. But there's another word. I think it's in English too. In Portuguese, I would say it's transigence or intransigence. This faculty, capability of you can come back and you can undo things, unthink things. Like maybe this belief is related to that because it's some sort of reversibility capacity. So you go back, you come back, and you undo the way the way of thinking, the way of like saving some things in memory. You can reverse that. So I would say that I like this term, this word, and I try to use it the most I can. So I think this is another opposite term considering the dogmatic stance or field.
Very interesting. Thank you, Alexandre.
Well,
we'll go for the next question. Yes, I would have one question to go with what Alexandre said. Because we live in a society that is very religious, right? I think that most of us had religious education. So how much can be accounted for this dogmatic view of people, the kind of education that we had? Because we basically are built, we are brought up to be dogmatic. And in the end, it's a kind of a struggle that we have when we want to change this mindset. What could we say about this, the role of education to make dogmatic people?
Thank you. I may say something. Well, Mario, that's a very, very good question, because if we think in terms of education, we may provide instruments for the families to overcome ideology and even the worst part of the religion ideology. So the basis for this education, I feel safe. I feel good to say that it may be on perception and experiences and discoveries. This is much different from to use the media conceptions, to use the heritage of ideology. It's different from tradition. If you think in terms of tradition in general, in any culture, it may provide continuity, things that may maintain the status in general. But if you have communities and societies where education may be based in the phenomenon of the discovery, you see, the perception, the experience, and the contact with the new. If you educate a child in this way, and if you learn by the end of that, and if you teach the child to make questions, you see, to make questions and to make exercise with its doubts, to make practice with my doubt. I may ask things. I may be free to ask and to create my personal understanding of the world. So if the education followed this kind of stream, I would be very, I would feel hope that it's clearly possible to overcome this problem. But as you may see, um, this doesn't happen. See,
Yes.
because everyone loves to communicate the traditions, the ways of thinking, the culture. See, to give to the children many things that are really ready. I don't know the right words in English, but the packet is full, complete. You don't need to think
Whole
too much.
package, right?
Yes, the whole pack is full, is complete. If you give this to the children, that's not good. You see, so that is my way of thinking.
Thank you, Ulisses.
Well,
Alexandre.
let's see. From an evolutionary perspective, it's hard to really be sure about what's the origin, what explains our dogmatic our dogmatic attitude and why it is so strong. I think education as a system that society uses to reproduce their ways, it's fairly, well, it's not so old. So as I said, from an evolutionary point of view, we can maybe the instincts of us as living beings, it tends to preserve behavior and attitudes. So if we consider a critical point of view, it's really new in history. So if we come back just a few centuries, we can see that when science began, like 400 years ago or so, just a few years after that, or just 1 century so after that, the modern systems of education also began. So what was the purpose of the educational systems is exactly to do sort of opposite force to tradition. So on one hand, society and families are more traditional, as Ulisses said, and they love to, teach children what to believe, what to like. For example, you need to have the same like soccer team or club as I do, as the parents do, and so on. But when we see the existence of a public or educational systems, they were proposed to do the opposite. So all children, they go through the same system. Of course, there are differences. I'm just saying ideally, and so they can live together there a few hours of the day and learn more abstract things than tradition. For example, read literature classics or study the history of philosophy and art and so on. So I think we should consider also the educational dimension, the formal educational dimension, in opposite to dogmatic, I'd say, like features of society and the dogmatic tendency of our society. So that was the point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Alexandre. We have some comments from the audience, and they go very in line with what you just said. It's from Eliane Voslaw. She said that she's been observing that the main point that holds people attached to religious dogmas is the fear to commit a sin if one doesn't follow that rule, and it's something related to submission to a belief. It's not easy, but possible to overcome. It's very in line with what you just said. Thank you, Eliane. So let's formally introduce Conscientiology to the conversation. And Alexandre, continuing with you, why is Conscientiology considered a science, and how does it relate to the principles of anti-dogmatism? And what is the relevance of self-experimentation within this context?
Well, it depends who we are talking about. Okay, we conscientiology researchers, we consider it a science, and we have our reasons. But the main scientific community, they don't. Well, we can't say they don't consider it a science, but they're not really concerned about that in general terms. So I'll answer in personal terms why I consider it a science. And after many years thinking about that and studying this topic, I consider it a science because it has a scientific method. We can say it has a basic scientific method, which I consider self-experimentation. I think because self-experimentation is a scientific method in what we say the conventional mainstream science. For instance, in health sciences or in medicine mainly, they use self-experimentation historically. There are even Nobel Prizes to self-experimentation results and so on. So what we do in Conscientiology is a systematic. We have the tools to do it. Is a systematic self-experimentation with consciential energy and our traits and attributes. So if we consider a scientific method as let's say a set of techniques which aim to acquire knowledge, considering variables. So if we go on from that, like simple definition, conscientiological self-experimentation can be considered a scientific method from which I think that all conscientiological knowledge was built on, of course, in the beginning, but then other scientific methods came, and then it's got more complex, and there are other approaches. But in a few words, conscientiology can be considered a science because it has scientific methods, which the basic one is self-experimentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexandre. Ulisses, your views on that, please.
Okay. Well, it's very good to hear the words Alexandre said. And I'd like to add another side of this subject. One side of it is the result of our constructions, that is the science. So I consider that we are building the science, okay? But the other side, I mean, is the people who is dealing with this new proposition, with conscientiology. If we consider conscientiology as a subject, we will find very good arguments, propositions. The ideas are, I think, they are very clear to explain. I don't know if they are very clear to understand, but for us who work with it, I feel that we feel comfortable to explain it. But this is not my subject. My subject, my point right now is the different ways that people deals with it, that people understand it. I mean, the people inside the conscientiological community. This is the point. This is the problem right now, because if we may wonder about the benefits of conscientiology to the world, of course, we may work together. The researchers may write books, the teachers. That's all right. Okay, we will make our work. I hope that we will succeed to spread our ideas. But the problem is, when we live together with our friends, with our colleagues, with the people in general, inside the conscientiological community, in general, we find very different levels of attitude. And we may find even dogmatic position, dogmatic thinking, even faith we may find. If we talk about Professor Valdo Vieira, it's very common to find people that consider his words as something almost dogmatic. You see? So what is written in the books? When you find someone that may consider that like a law, you see, like a principle that will guide the person's life. So this is the point, I mean. So how may we consider that if we have the proposition of projectology, when anyone has the possibility to live out, to go outside the physical body, to see the extra physical reality by themselves, and to check the propositions. If we wonder that everyone should act in this way, we should expect a better result, but this doesn't happen. In general, people prefer to listen and to follow. See, the preference to listen and to follow, to be together with my friend, to agree with my friend, to agree with the people I like, to be together in this movement, and to feel safe, to feel strong, a new idea. Oh, I agree with the power of this new idea. You see, this is very dangerous. I see. And in general, I see that this is the problem in terms of dogmatic thinking in the conscientiological community. This is the problem. And it's very interesting because the original proposition of the consciential paradigm gives us all the instruments to overcome this situation. You see? This is very curious. So we are talking about human nature. That's human nature. So we may consider this problem strongly, very strongly, if we find this kind of situation. For instance, myself, many times I see that I am relying too much in such an idea if I don't check it. You see? Oh, this is a very good this is a great problem, and it's not easy for us to change our minds, to change our way of being. So I expect that the scientific culture, the experimental culture, may help too much in this way. And we should look for a kind of community where the extra-physical practice, the experience with the out-of-body experience should spread more than we have. So I see that this culture and this tendency in the conscientiological community is becoming a little bit weaker. So I would suggest that this should be an interesting way for that. And also, if we consider, as we said before, good educational principles for the new ideas, for the new ways of thinking. That it's a neophilic tendency. We should work hard to build educational tendencies in this way.
All right, Ulisses, very good, very well said. We have one comment about what you said here from Law. Very good point. Very good point, Ulisses Schlosser. Dogmatic postures still seem to be part of many of us. We should put the disbelief principle more into practice. Very good, Eliane. Very good comment.
Can I make some comment? Can I make some comment about that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Because it's I am very concerned with that as well. This understanding of the community, and I'm going to present a paper, a research in the Congress of Conscientiology, and I'm trying to highlight a little bit about this topic, because I think we should make a difference between the application of knowledge and the production of knowledge. So of course, the application of knowledge means to put it into practice. And it supposes that some knowledge was produced before. And the production of knowledge, it means the research which is proposing new knowledge. So Conscientiology began with knowledge that was produced by Valdo Vieira with projectiology, for instance, and 700 experiments. So we got in the first moment, we inherited perhaps knowledge that was produced before, and we had to put it into practice. We needed to apply it, and I agree with the main diagnose. Maybe we can say that. But I would put it in other words. I'd say that maybe most people, they are still applying knowledge. They're not producing knowledge. And many people, they don't make this difference. They don't know this difference. There is such a difference that perhaps they think that when they are applying this knowledge, they are producing it. So, but the diagnosis may be that there's a lack of research and experimentation. But what's the reason for that? And I think we are lacking scientific education, not in this community, but in society in society in general. So we which are concerned with this, I am, and I know Ulisses is, and you guys too, I think we should be more interested in how can we do the education which is required to change this panorama. So it's not, so you see that we come from a scientific discussion to a political discussion, because we should be very careful when we make this move from science to politics. So we shouldn't impose anything, I think. If it's a scientific community, things should happen as a result from the research and the popularization, the communication of knowledge, but not as an imposition. I think a scientific community is a democratic community with all there is, with all differences of profiles there are. So, well, that's it. I agree with the diagnosis, but I think we can't force anything different than this. We should work better, do better research, and be more efficient in communicating the knowledge we are producing, and as with that, motivating people to produce knowledge rather than just applying knowledge.
That's very, very, very well said, Alexandre. And it dawned on me that I had something to say about it. Concerning this, right? I think it has a lot to do with critical thinking. In general, I think that we Brazilians have some struggles to have a critical thinking. Possibly, I truly have this on the fact that we had an education not exactly based on the production of critical thinking. We were a lot repeating what we were said right in the classroom. So methodologically speaking, I think that for us it's a lot more difficult challenge to have this transition from the dogmatic view, the dogmatic thinking, and anti-dogmatic thinking. Ulysses, is it really true that maybe if we enhance or if we improve our critical thinking in the everyday life, it's a way to overcome this dependence on what is said or what is seen or found out by others and not by me? What's the difficult and what is? I would like us to go to some. I know maybe some tips is not the best name to give it, but some light. Would you shed some light to some point that we can have to overcome this dogmatic education that we inherited?
Okay, thank you, Mario. Hello. Thank you, Mario, for the question. You are right. It should be a solution, critical thinking. But in practical terms, in general, it doesn't work with a lot of people because, as Alexandre said, it's very important for us to understand who is in the other side. What is the condition of the other people? And the other people, they are not the same. They are different. So we may not use one solution to everyone or two solutions to everyone. We may understand each case and what this person needs in the work of dialogue. You see? Let me tell you something before our time is over. I published on this subject, on this book, 4 years ago. Okay, The Return of Ethics and Spirituality in Global Development. This was published in Belgium, and I have here inside a chapter on phenomenology of faith. Okay, it's written down here in the screen. And in this text, in this chapter, I propose a structure to understand this problem, and maybe it may reach some consideration to the question Mario made right now to help us in terms of diagnosis. For instance, five different categories to classify different conditions of the people. First, when someone has an effective connection with an extraphysical phenomenon. I call it an effective connection. An effective connection means that I perceived it, I consider it, and it may have consequences in my life. So I'm considering here the clear possibility when the person considers the reality of this kind of contact. Okay, this is the positive approach, the first one. So if you are in touch with someone in this condition, you may have a special approach with this person. And the second point, you are dealing with another people that believes in the connection with the extraphysical reality. The second person is not considering an effective contact. This second person believes in the connection. You see? So the approach may be different. Okay? So this is the second case. The third case, when you are dealing with a person who makes confusion between the real contact and the belief. Both categories are not clear to this person. And this condition of confusion in general is the most common condition. You see? It's not easy because there are a lot of influences for both sides. And you may deal with a lot of clarifying arguments or conditions to help this kind of person. And in the fourth case, the person who denies completely the new possibility. You see, imagine that you are dealing with someone who denies the new possibility of a new idea, an extraphysical contact. Okay? Even when the phenomenon occurred, even when the real phenomenon occurred, the person denies it. You understand? In this case, the person has no doubt about it. The person simply denies. And the last case is the fantasy about the connection. You see, it's not only a simple belief. The person creates new fantasies about the phenomena. You are talking with someone and you feel that the mindset of the people is very rich, full of information that is not real. You see, a lot of fantasies. So this is another category in this spectrum. So I spoke here about 5 different categories. I consider those the main, but there are many, many others. So to deal with this problem, we may consider the differences in the people in the other side. You mean, you see, you know what I mean? So for each one of those, you may find a different approach. But at first, when you start talking with someone, you may try to ask yourself, who is that person I'm talking to? What is the way of thinking, the way of perceiving? You see, I think this is the main point. And mainly for us, who am I? My way of thinking, my arguments, my basis, see, for me to deal with other people. So those questions and those perceptions in terms of relations, I may see that it for an interested person may be the starting point. You see?
Excellent, Ulisses. Very good points, and also Alexandre, excellent point that you brought about the distinction on production and application of knowledge. I think it's very important to bring these topics to the spotlight for discussion. I would have several other questions for discussion today with you. I find it very interesting, all of this topic, and those ideas that we discuss. It would be topic for another editions. For let's
Sure.
talk about it, because we are almost out of time. So I will ask Alexandre if, to bring here your final considerations, and then Ulisses, so that Mário can conclude. Thank you. I'm very pleased to participate in this discussion.
Sure. So I would like to summarize, I think, a position, a central position, that we are in transition from non-scientific paradigms to scientific paradigms. Okay, what does it mean? That we as consciousnesses, we are coming from other sort of models of living, thinking, and so on. For instance, religious, political, military, artistic, and others. So all those worldviews, they represent to us, or they allow us to interact with the world somehow. So science, the beginning of science, or the modern, how can I say, the appearance of science in modern world, it means that we can live based on hypothetical knowledge, hypothetical stances. So this hypothetical way to relate the world, the possibility of living on hypothetical basis, this is what summarizes the scientific paradigms. And consciential paradigm is an example. It is an example of a scientific paradigm, but it goes further than matter, the intraphysical dimension. So we can be scientific, we can have a scientific paradigm, but we can study things that go beyond the intraphysical dimension. So it is a process of learning. We are in transition, and we are learning to behave and to interact with each other and with reality in a hypothetical basis, and also with multidimensionality. So that's what I would like to point out. And thank you so much for the opportunity. That was very rich for me also to be with you guys, and to meet you again, and also Ulisses, and to be able to share all these discussions with you. Thank you.
Very good, Alexandre. Well, as we are talking about scientific paradigm, I think that we are having a very important event coming up this year, right, Alexandre? Would you like to talk a bit about the Congress of Conscientiology?
Yes, of course. So this next July, we will be having, for the first time ever, a Congress, an International Congress of Conscientiology. It's the first, and it will happen from July the 25th to the 28th. We'll have a few days before that with workshops, the pre-event, and then the Congress itself. So yes, you can see it's very small there, but you can see the program is very rich. We'll have many conferences with conscienciological researchers. We have a total amount of 92 presentations, considering conferences and roundtables and banners and so on. So our intention is to approach all specialties in conscientiology in order to do a big upgrade of all the conscientiological community, in order to help in that we were just talking about, to raise the level of scientificity. So I would like to ask everyone to participate. You can participate presentially and also online. So the website is there on the screen. You can go there and see the all program, all the venue, and there's the link to subscribe. That's it.
Very
Thank
good,
you.
Alexandre. Ulisses, your wrap-up words.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Mario. Well, I would say a few last words that may shock our colleagues from the
Our
Conscientiology
viewers.
community. Okay, I agree with the words of Professor Valdo Vieira when he wrote his book Projectology. There is a section there, the projector and the projections, and he analyzes the parapsychism and the projectology and the animism. And Professor Valdo says clearly that parapsychism is not the best way. And we should enhance the way of pure perception through the projective extraphysical experience. That is quite different from parapsychism. And Professor Valdo clarifies this point in the book Projectology. He says clearly that parapsychism is something that we may abandon through evolution. You see, parapsychism is not synonymous as paraperception. Paraperception is the way, the direct paraperception. It is different from parapsychism that happens through an extraphysical helper. You see, this difference is very clear, and I suggest for those people interested to understand this point to read the book Projectology in this section. So for us, inside the conscientiological community, I imagine and I suppose also that the way is to develop the education in terms of perception, in terms of out-of-body experience, the projection of consciousness, extraphysical lucidity. Okay, and parapsychism is full of traps. It's very good for our development. It's very important in our evolution to understand the parapsychic phenomena. But Professor Valdo clarifies this point, and it's very important for us. A lot of the confusion in terms of not understanding the reality of the extraphysical phenomenon is the difficulty to interpret the parapsychism, to deal with mistakes, misunderstanding in terms of what the person thinks is perception, but it's not perception. In general, it is imagination. And it's very hard to separate those things, to deal with that. So the way and the whole work of Professor Valdo to show us the possibility of the projection of the consciousness outside the body, this should be for us right now maybe the best way for us to develop inside our community and to show this possibility to the world. So this is my final message. And I intend to work with this and to try to help to develop new resources in this field.
Very good, Ulisses. Ricardo.
Well, just say thank again for participating in this very rich discussion. Very, very glad and honored to be part of it. Thank you, Ulisses and Alexandre, for the very interesting discussion today. And
Very
thank
nice.
you for all of our audience for participating too.
Very good. I would say the same. It was amazing. Lots of new approaches and new perspectives for this topic, which is very important. Thank you, Alexandre Zaslavsky, for your participation today. Zaslavsky, right? Zaslavsky, yeah. Very good. Now pronouncing correctly. Ulisses Schlosser, thank you very much for your participation once again. Ricardo, my partner today. The next Let's Talk will be held on May 25th. We have guests here talking about their experiences with near-death experience, which is another topic very, I would say, internationalized. There's lots of people have interest in this kind of experience. We are going to have people to tell us their experiences with near-death experience, NDE, on May 25th. Have a good weekend. Thank you for your participation. Thank our monitors behind the screen who actually supported us in this conversation. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye-bye.